This is the story of a typical loser, a guy who excelled at absolutely nothing except video games. He spent his days glued to the screen, dreaming of a life where he could touch some grass and be surrounded by beautiful girls. But reality hit hard. His unattractive looks and empty pockets were constant reminders of just how far away that dream was. One day, though, something unexpected happened. He got an invitation from a girl he knew through his favorite game. The thought of meeting her made his heart race with a mix of excitement and dread. Was it real, or just a cruel prank set up by trolls on the other side of the screen? After battling his doubts, he decided to go for it. But as soon as he stepped into the real world, fate struck, literally. His distant dream of a better life was crushed by a truck that plowed straight into him without a second thought. Yet, as tragic as that was, the story didn't end there. Death wasn't the final stop. He was reincarnated, but not as the cool, overpowered hero he'd imagined. No, he came back as an ugly, low-level mushroom tasked with defeating the era's demon king. Our story begins in a rundown apartment, where the clicks of a mechanical keyboard mingled with the ticking of a clock. Inside, the room was alive with energy as intense gaming commands echoed through the cramped space. The protagonist, our cultured gamer, was in the middle of an epic raid, his focus razor-sharp. The action had reached its peak, and his hands moved so fast that his APM, actions per minute, was nearing superhuman levels. "Keep up," he called to his guild mates as the battle intensified. After a final surge of effort, the screen erupted into a smoky explosion. Victory! The familiar triumph screen flashed on his monitor, and the after-raid lobby was buzzing with celebration. The level 61 bandit was the first to give him credit, praising his leadership. A level 56 beastmaster chimed in, agreeing that their raid leader, Frog Hero, was the reason for their success. Even the level 39 mage, despite her low stats, was thrilled to have been included in the raid. Frog Hero, their level 75 berserker, and the man of the hour, humbly thanked everyone and promised another big raid soon. As he read through the flood of praise from his guild mates, a wistful thought crossed his mind. If only life outside the game could feel this good. But back in his cramped and shabby room, reality weighed heavily on him. The sense of accomplishment he got from dominating in the virtual world was fleeting. As the victory glow faded, the emptiness of his real life crept back in. The moment Wazi snapped back to reality, he couldn't help but reflect on his life. Wazi, ironically, also the name of a comic character he adored, wasn't much different from the fictional version. Like the character, he was a weakling and a coward in real life. He was short, broke, and frankly, not the sharpest tool in the shed. Just another average loser college student. Sometimes he'd dream of a different reality. If life were like a game where grinding levels was possible, he'd be the most hardcore, solo power-leveling monster hunter out there. In that imaginary world, he'd finally be the center of attention. Ladies would line up for him, showering him with praise and affection. A perfect life for a lonely man. But alas, that version of Wazi only existed in his head. His dream was interrupted by the buzz of a message notification in the dead of night. Blinking at his screen, he saw the message came from a girl, the newbie mage from his guild. What could she possibly want? The raid was already over. Wazi's jaw dropped when he read her text. It was an invitation to meet up. Reality sank in, and a smile stretched across his face. Of course, he didn't let his hopes shoot straight to the stars. What if this dainty little mage turned out to be some creepy old guy waiting to snap his legs in half? But then, Wazi shook off the negativity. Who was he kidding? He had no money, no looks. What would anyone even catfish him for? He figured you can't lose when you've got nothing to lose. And if he didn't take a chance now, he'd stay lonely forever. With that thought, he took the plunge. 2 texts later, he had a date set for Saturday at the city park. For the first time in a long time, Wazi felt like he'd actually won something in real life. He was so thrilled, he let out a celebratory scream, loud enough to wake the neighbors. Days flew by, and soon Saturday arrived. Wazi's weird Pikachu alarm clock blared its cheery wake-up song, which he immediately smacked off. Jumping out of bed, he got ready for his big moment. The city park was blanketed in stunning red leaves this time of year, but Wazi wasn't paying much attention to the scenery. He clutched a small bouquet of flowers, his nerves making him fidget as he checked and rechecked the arrangement to make sure it was perfect. For the first time in ages, he cared about how his hair looked, nervously straightening his fancy red bow tie over and over again. Standing at the park's entrance, Wazi made a silent vow. Today was going to be the start of a new chapter. No more cowardly, loser Wazi. Today, he was going to be someone different, someone who deserved to win. From that day forward, Wazi felt life opening up in ways he'd never imagined. The thought made him shiver with delight. It was a strange mix of emotions, nervousness wrapped in excitement. The closer he got to the place he'd dreamed of, the faster his heart pounded. It reminded him of the times he'd been bullied in school. A part of him wanted to run away, while another part wanted to stand tall and face it. It was an overwhelming, bizarrely intense feeling. Wazi could almost feel the sun shining brighter and flowers blooming around him as he imagined the beauty of starting a relationship. With the way he was now, he felt grateful for taking the first step out of his comfort zone. These romantic daydreams were just a bonus. Unfortunately, his first step as a changed man also happened to be his last. Lost in his thoughts, Wazi stepped into the pedestrian lane while the lights still showed red. He barely noticed the other pedestrians try to hold him back. Too distracted by his fantasies, he didn't hear the screeching of the infamous Ice Guy truck barreling toward him. The truck's brakes failed, and its horn was silent. The collision was inevitable. Wazi's body hit the ground with a sickening thud and slid across the concrete, leaving a trail of blood. The truck driver rushed out, panicking, but it was too late. Wazi lay unresponsive as bystanders gathered around in a frenzy, some screaming, others calling for help. But for Wazi, amidst all the chaos, there was an eerie quiet. Time itself seemed to freeze. In his final moments, as he felt the light of his life flicker and fade, regret washed over him. He had dreamed of so much, a new love, a new life, but it was all gone in an instant. Other than being good at video games, he had no real accomplishments, and he wished he had experienced more of the world. A deep tiredness settled in, and with it came acceptance. This was it, the end, or so he thought. Just as his life dimmed completely, a strange loading screen appeared in his mind. Confused and terrified, he wondered what was happening. That's when a voice echoed, calm yet unsettling, telling him that it was the Wazi system and that from now on, it would guide him. The voice explained the situation. Wazi had been hit by the truck and reincarnated into a new world. It felt like a dream, a bizarre fantasy born from watching too much anime. But no matter how hard Wazi tried to wake himself up, he couldn't. The system continued, saying he had been placed into a new body that would take some time to adjust to. Wazi, frustrated and scared, began to complain and demand to be sent back home. The system, clearly annoyed, silenced him with a sharp warning. No matter how hard Wazi had tried to improve himself in his life, it didn't change the fact that his journey had been cut short before it could truly begin. The system assured Wazi that he could return to his original world, but only if he completed all the missions it had lined up for him. Desperate to get out, he quickly accepted whatever mission it had in store. However, the system warned him that these missions wouldn't be simple, nor would they be over in just a day or two. It told him to get used to his new body first. That's when the unsettling reality hit. Wazi's new body didn't have hands. To make things crystal clear, the system urged him to look at his reflection in the nearby pond. Wazi attempted to walk, but his lower body bounced and jumped awkwardly instead. When he finally reached the pond's surface, he froze. The water, clear as a mirror, revealed his new form for the first time. He had been turned into a pathetic little mushroom. Wazi bobbed up and down in disbelief, horrified by the sight. Suddenly, all the creepy stares he'd been feeling made sense. The faint, relentless sound of chewing reached his ears, sending shivers down his non-existent spine. Those disturbing mouths, gnawing and drooling, were watching him like a snack. Fear gripped him as he realized just how dangerous his new reality was. This was how the system formally welcomed him to the brave mainland. It didn't shy away from the absurdity of the situation, even claiming it understood how difficult it was to accept. But there was no escape now. The game had already begun, and there was no turning back. Wazi would have to figure things out fast. Just as panic threatened to overwhelm him, a sudden shock ran through his brain like a bolt of lightning. In an instant, his mind was flooded with knowledge, the history of a world filled with magic, wonders, and dangers. This was the brave mainland, his new reality. Long ago, humans and monsters lived together in harmony. The monsters, with their powerful, muscular bodies, helped humans with all kinds of physical tasks, while humans, gifted with a natural affinity for magic, used their talents to support the monsters, ensuring their survival and prosperity. Their lives were deeply intertwined, and for a time, peace reigned across the land. But then came the day when the demon Lord Gollum shattered that peace. Gollum, the pinnacle of all monsters, despised humans for their arrogance, believing themselves superior. His hatred sparked a war that changed everything. To defend themselves, the king established the Golden Age of guilds, tasking them with exterminating monsters. This era gave rise to legends of 6 legendary warriors, braves, who joined forces to face Gollum. Despite their extraordinary gifts, the braves found Gollum too powerful to defeat outright. Instead, they used their combined strength to divide his immortal body into 6 parts, hiding each piece in a different location. The Castle of Time, the Pentachrome Desert, the Sunken World, the Tempest Grasslands, the Source Volcano, and the Land of the Dead. Even after Gollum was sealed, peace never returned. The bond between humans and monsters was severed, replaced by hatred and fear. To make matters worse, Gollum's loyal followers continued to roam the lands, spreading chaos and searching tirelessly for a way to unseal their master. The prophecy warned that Gollum's return would bring the destruction of the mainland. And now, with his followers on the move, time was running out. This was Wazi's mission, to prevent the Demon Lord's revival. The system bluntly informed him that if he succeeded, he'd finally return to his original world. But when Wazi learned of this monumental task, his reaction was anything but heroic. What? He ranted, his frustration exploding. The sheer absurdity of it all left him spiraling. After all, they'd reincarnated him into a damn mushroom. Slipping and falling flat on the floor mid-rant, Wazi couldn't believe his misfortune. The system, unfazed by his tantrum, calmly advised him to take time adjusting to his new body. But how was he supposed to save the world like this? He couldn't even stand upright without exhausting himself. A goblin, a skeleton, or even a slime would have been better. A spider? Fine. But a mushroom? How could he possibly defeat the Demon Lord when he couldn't even pick himself up off the ground? The thought of failure gnawed at him. Perhaps it was impossible. Maybe he'd never return to his original world. But the system's voice cut through his despair, reminding him that the game would go on, with or without him. His first mission was simple, though it felt like an insult. Survive for the designated amount of time. The reward was tempting enough to keep him going. But Wazi couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a long and ridiculous journey. A countdown began, and the snails scattered, retreating into the foliage. When the countdown ended, the system announced that Wazi had 1 hour to survive. They were coming. Confused and uneasy, Wazi wondered who they were. Just who in the world could be coming? His question was answered when he looked toward the stone portal. Dozens of young players started flooding into the woods, their faces lit with excitement as they prepared to wipe out monsters. A strange, dangerous sensation washed over Wazi as he realized his mushroom body now marked him as one of those monsters. To these kids, he was prey. Desperate, he tried his best to bounce into a nearby hiding spot, hoping they wouldn't notice him. One of the children carried a twig for a weapon, swatting at snails with brutal efficiency. The boy grinned as he bragged to himself about how smart he was to bring his mother's laundry stick. It was a surprisingly good weapon. As he passed by, snails would cower inside their shells, trembling. But the kids showed no mercy. They picked up loose rocks, shattering shells to kill the snails, no matter how hard they tried to hide. A snail, after all, could never outrun a human. Among the group, one girl didn't seem as interested in smashing shells. She had a different goal. She was gathering materials for her class change, dreaming of becoming a beastmaster. She didn't hesitate to yank a snail from its shell, her force ripping it apart with a sickening sound. Bloodied but determined, she added the remains to her storage pot. Only 9 more shells to go, she murmured to herself, already scanning the area for her next victim. Wazi watched this horrifying scene unfold. Back when he used to play games, he never felt anything about grinding monsters. But now, seeing the madness from a monster's perspective, everything felt different. These players looked far scarier than he'd ever imagined. Then, something unexpected happened. One of the snails finally decided to fight back. With a single critical hit, it struck a boy square in the chest, instantly draining his HP. The system teleported the boy back to the beginner village, punishing him with an EXP penalty and the loss of some equipment. The rest of the kids froze in shock, but their horror only grew when the snail's reinforcements arrived. From the foliage emerged the level 3 snail daddy. He wasn't just any snail. This one had dreams of being a biker daddy, though he settled for riding a skateboard. Wazi, hiding deep in the bushes, watched with wide eyes. He couldn't help but feel curious about the snail stats. That's when he discovered something incredible. he had gained the ability to perform appraisals. Snail Daddy instantly became the center of attention for every player. His shell was the rarest class change ingredient, and everyone wanted it. The kids quickly banded together, forming a chaotic mob to overwhelm the giant snail. The initial clash was brutal. Players were eliminated left and right. Many of the frontliners couldn't handle Snail Daddy's fierce attacks, but their sacrifice paved the way for someone to land the final blow. Among the crowd was a level 4 player who had been waiting for this moment. Seeing Snail Daddy battered and vulnerable, the boy dashed forward with his sword drawn, determined to claim the kill. But as he got close, Snail Daddy lunged at him, sinking his jaws into the boy's foot. Unfortunately for the snail, the boarskin boots the kid wore were too tough to pierce. Even so, Snail Daddy didn't give up. He fought fiercely for his survival and for the other snails. Wazzy, watching from a distance, felt a surge of emotion as he saw the old snail refusing to back down despite the odds. It was a heroic last stand, and Wazzy couldn't help but silently cheer for him. But without his skateboard, which had been destroyed earlier, Snail Daddy was slow and defenseless, a sitting duck. Finally, the crafty kid managed to deliver the finishing blow. As Snail Daddy fell, the kid tore the precious shell from his body and celebrated his victory. His reward? 20 experience points, the rare shell, and some meat. With this loot, he could finally return to town and complete his class change to become a knight. Seeing Snail Daddy's tragic defeat, Wazzy felt nothing but despair. He didn't belong here and desperately wished for someone, anyone, to help him escape. Suddenly, a rustling sound came from the bushes nearby. A few remaining players heard it too and decided to investigate. They parted the bushes, revealing a frightened little mushroom trembling in the shadows. To Wazzy's surprise, the kids didn't attack him. Instead, they froze in fear, staring at him with wide eyes before bolting in the opposite direction. Wazzy was stunned. Why were they so scared of him? A system notification popped up, suggesting he check his attribute panel. Hesitantly, Wazzy opened it, and his jaw dropped. He was a level 5 creature with a surprisingly solid HP, MP, and SP pool. No wonder the newbies ran away. He was stronger than most of them, possibly even stronger than the player who had just defeated Snail Daddy. His attention shifted to his abilities. He only had 2 skills for now, Appraisal and Mushroom Bash, both at level 1. Appraisal seemed like a handy tool for gathering information, but Wazzy couldn't help but feel a flicker of curiosity. If this was just the beginning, what else was he capable of? Wazzy couldn't help but grin to himself. Mushroom Bash? It sounded like a basic skill, but it didn't cost any mana to use. With his stats, this simple move had the potential to dominate the starter village with ease. He had thought the system was forcing him to play on Hell mode as a powerless mushroom, but now he realized something. It wasn't Hell mode at all. For him, it was practically easy mode. Feeling confident, Wazzy turned his sights on a group of players tormenting the poor snails. Stealing his resolve, he charged in, determined to show them what he was capable of. The first Mushroom Bash was a smashing success, literally. He knocked out 2 of the little brats in one clean hit, earning himself 5 XP for every newbie he took down. The other players started noticing something was wrong when their buddies began dropping mysteriously. That's when they spotted him, the ruthless mushroom monster. One kid froze in fear, his face pale as a sheet. Panicking, he bolted for a nearby vine and climbed it like his life depended on it, scrambling up like a clumsy Tarzan. The monster wave shouldn't have started yet. There's no way high-level mobs are out here, the kid thought, his heart pounding. But Wazzy wasn't about to let him go so easily. With a mischievous snicker, he leapt with impressive force, aiming to snatch the coward off the vine. However, his overconfidence got the better of him. He smacked his head against a tree branch midair, dazing himself and losing momentum. Without hands to grab onto anything, he tumbled back down and was forced to let the terrified player escape. Frustrated but undeterred, Wazzy turned his attention back to the forest, looking for his next victim. As he traversed the area, scanning for prey, a tiny pebble hit him square on the head. It barely did 2 points of damage, but it still stung. Annoyed, Wazzy turned to see who had the guts to challenge him. A group of level 2 to 4 players stood before him, weapons drawn and formation tight. The vine-climbing kid had returned with reinforcements, pointing at Wazzy and shouting, "That's the one! That mushroom thing attacked us?" Wazzy smirked, keeping his level advantage in mind. If they thought they could take him down, they were in for a rude awakening. He initiated a spin attack, warming up with a quick rotation before unleashing the fastest and strongest mushroom bash he could muster. But the players were ready. His all-out attack slammed into a round wooden shield, neutralizing the damage. The impact, however, was enough to throw their formation into chaos, scattering them left and right. One of them, a bespectacled player who seemed to be calling the shots, yelled orders to split up and surround him. Strategically, Iron Helmet continued hurling his manual stone barrage, and one of his throws landed perfectly, a critical hit that doubled the damage. The attack hurt so much it sent Wazi into a blind rage. To make things worse, the other kids joined in, picking up stones and bombarding him with their own annoying attacks. Our mushroom boy had no way to counter this humiliating assault. Sure, each hit only did 2 points of damage, but when so many were raining down, the cumulative effect was brutal. Wazi couldn't keep up. His movements weren't as quick or agile as a human's, and facing a coordinated group attack was overwhelming. Finally, though, his mushroom bash skill came off cooldown. Desperate, he launched himself forward, trying to close the distance and take some players down. But the party's tank was ready. Just like before, the tank intercepted his skill with a steel shield, blocking him completely. Before Wazi could recover, the player nicknamed Glasses rushed in with his sword. It was his turn to strike. Wazi panicked, barely dodging the first swing, but the blade still grazed him, slicing off a bit of his mushroom flesh. The wound was small, but the pain was excruciating. He could feel the tide turning against him. The group of so-called weaklings was overpowering him through sheer teamwork. Wazi had seen this strategy countless times in the gaming world. It was the essence of raid tactics. Tanks draw aggro while others focus on damage and support. Now, he was on the receiving end of it. With his mushroom bash skill back on cooldown, he was helpless, a sitting duck being slowly whittled down. Each small attack chipped away at him until, finally, he collapsed unconscious. The party stood over the defeated high-level mushroom monster, their faces lighting up with celebratory smiles. They were already dreaming of the rewards they'd bring back to the starter village, thrilled at their unexpected victory. But then something fell off. The experience points they expected hadn't shown up yet. That's when it hit them. Wazi wasn't dead. He was using an advanced tactic, playing dead. Now that the group was gathered up and completely off guard, it was time for his revenge. In one swift burst, he killed 4 players in quick succession, their shocked faces fading with defeat. The sudden burst of experience was enough to level him up. Wazi's body began to glow with a mysterious light, bathing the battlefield in radiance. He had reached level 6. With the level up, his injuries healed instantly, and all the pain disappeared in the blink of an eye. Wazi stood tall, feeling stronger and better than ever. The healing sensation of a level up truly was a glorious thing. Laughing with joy, Wazi hatched a cunning plan. He decided to hide and ambush unsuspecting newbies, farming easy XP until he could reach the maximum level. Once he was strong enough, he'd leave the starter village for good. It seemed like the perfect plan, but what he didn't anticipate was a bolt of lightning suddenly striking him. The sky was clear and sunny. There was no way it happened naturally. Turns out, it was a spell cast by a mage from a 3-person team. Wazi only survived because the mage wasn't particularly skilled. The group, consisting of a level 18 mage, a level 17 archer, and a level 12 warrior, was on a mission to eliminate a monster causing trouble in the starter village. They weren't looking for a fight. They just wanted to finish the job and move on. Meanwhile, Wazi, realizing the massive level gap between him and the players, began to panic. The mage, eager to test his abilities, cast a minor magic bullet at Wazi. The mushroom tried to dodge, but the spell grazed the top of his head. Pain seared through him as the magic burned and gouged his mushroom cap, dealing significant damage. Wazi hadn't expected to run into high-level players here of all places, and seeing the destruction a single spell caused, he knew there was only one option left, his ultimate technique: run like the wind. Using every ounce of strength he had, Wazi dashed in the opposite direction. The players stood in stunned silence, watching a low-level monster retreat so intelligently. The warrior, eager to impress his higher-level teammates, stepped forward. He grinned and declared, "I'll handle this mushroom." He had just learned a new skill, Earth Cleaver, and was itching to try it out. With a powerful swing, the warrior unleashed the skill, creating a solid earth wall in Wazi's path. Wazi, unable to stop in time, crashed headfirst into the wall with a loud thud. The impact drained a significant chunk of his HP, leaving him below 50%. Dazed and flipping off the wall, Wazi tried to regain his footing. But the archer had other plans. Seeing an opportunity to finish the magnificent monster, the archer marred an arrow and released it with precision. Wazi didn't even have a chance to react. The arrow struck true, draining the last 23 HP he had left. His health plummeted to 0, and Wazi toppled over alongside the earth wall. It was finally game over. Even the system confirmed it. His elastic body bounced lifelessly a couple of times before landing face down in the dirt. The warrior turned to his sister, nodding in approval. Her archery was nothing short of impressive, worthy of being recruited by the Rangers Guild. But before they could celebrate, the mage, clearly frustrated, interrupted them. He quickly focused back on collecting the mushroom corpse for the reward, saying nothing but his actions spoke volumes. He was ready to head home. Meanwhile, the system, watching from the sidelines, couldn't help but sigh at Wazi's situation. It muttered in a tone of disappointment. An expert gamer like you, dying so quickly? You've still got one revival coin left. You really don't have a choice now. Wazi knew he had no other option but to use the coin, reviving himself and feeling the life return to his body. He quickly noticed a new ability had unlocked, Spore Explosion, and with that he was back at full health. Without hesitating, Wazi used his newly acquired skill, filling the air with spores. The explosion obscured his movements, and the players were caught off guard. They had never seen a low-level mushroom with such a strange ability before. As the spores clouded the area, the players were thrown off for a moment, struggling to track his movements. Wazi seized the chance to break free, but the archer's sharp eyes quickly caught sight of him trying to flee. With no time to waste, she shouted to her team, and they quickly assumed their positions, ready to chase him down. Wazi pushed his mushroom body to the limit, realizing that his life was on the line. The system had already warned him that he had about 3 minutes left before it was all over. His limbs, enhanced by the hardened ability, gave him a bit of a boost, but it wasn't enough to outrun the pursuing players. With his heart racing, he used another spore explosion to block their vision, hoping to buy himself some more time, but the players were closing in faster than he expected. They had already anticipated his move. And then Wazi realized the real problem, the mark above his head. The archer had infused her arrows with tracking magic. This isn't good, Wazi thought. The archer now had him locked in. Just as Wazi tried to dodge, the warrior pounced on him with all his might. He barely managed to move out of the way, but the warrior was relentless. The wind blades cut through the air with terrifying force, grazing his body and dealing 18 points of damage. The pain was intense, but Wazi refused to go down like this. He activated another spore explosion, hoping it would block their vision long enough to escape. The archer, however, remained calm and collected, smiling as she watched the mushroom struggle. She knew she had him. With the tracking magic on her arrow, she could hit her target even with her eyes closed. With a swift release, her arrow flew straight and true, piercing Wazi's body and draining more than half of his remaining HP. Wazi's strength faltered, and now, lying helpless on the ground, he felt his speed drop and his SP consumption increase, halting his auto recovery altogether. The players slowly approached, admiring the cleverness of the mushroom monster, but knowing all too well that it was only a matter of time before it fell. Much to everyone's surprise, something big was about to happen. The players, caught off guard, looked up at the sky and saw something strange. A massive teleportation magic circle appeared out of thin air, just as Wazi's survival mission countdown hit 0. The mage, a seasoned veteran, instantly recognized what was going on and yelled for his team to run. From the circle, mushroom monsters began to appear one by one, filling the sky. The wave of monsters finally arrived. They descended to the ground, moving like a group of cuddly killers, ready to tear through anything in their path. The inexperienced warrior, however, smiled, thinking his seniors were being overly cautious. They're afraid of nothing, he muttered to himself, charging in head first. He quickly began to slaughter the mushroom monsters, cutting through them without much effort. Each kill was like free experience points for him. Using his Tomahawk Cyclone, he mowed down multiple monsters at once. Dazed and dead mushroom bodies littered the floor, each dropping 25 experience points. To him, it was basically a free experience buffet. His seniors, already fed up with his reckless behavior, gave up on him, knowing there was no reasoning with the idiotic warrior. As he kept charging forward, the warrior screamed at them to run away like chickens. The mage sighed, not bothering to respond, and the archer didn't care either. Disbanding the party, the veterans ran off. The warrior cursed them, calling them cowardly idiots who were too afraid to farm free experience. But then, the main event began, and everything changed. The teleportation circle, which had seemed harmless at first, wasn't what it appeared. A level 60 giant Mushroom King, the leader of all the mushroom monsters, had arrived for its weekly descent to the starter village. The warrior, realizing the gravity of the situation, panicked. He feared being crushed by an endgame monster, and that's exactly what happened. The Mushroom King's massive body slammed into him, likely crushing the warrior's bones with the sheer force. As the chaos unfolded, the mushroom monsters continued their rampage. But the warrior? He would be revived and sent back to the starter village, facing all the penalties that came with it. The experience he had earned over the past few days would be gone just like that. The Mushroom King was far too powerful for anyone to handle. Meanwhile, Wazi, still in a critical condition, wondered if the Mushroom Parade had come to save him. The Mushroom King unsheathed his blade and ordered his troops to move forward. The monsters leapt and bounced their way deeper into the woods, but Wazi, lying there, was ignored. He thought they might have come to help him, but they left him behind to fend for himself. Wazi wanted to scream that he, too, was a mushroom who needed help, but he had no energy left. As he passed out, an unfamiliar figure appeared in the distance. Would he die a miserable death, or would he finally receive the help he so desperately needed?